B'Shem Hashem Na'aseh V'Nasliach. Welcome everyone to our weekly shiur on the Parashat with the Perush of the Zera Shimshon. Tonight we are doing Parashat Vayeshev, which is, and in Derush Yud Dalet, the 14th Derush of the Parashat this week, the 14th Ma'amar of the Zera Shimshon. For those of you that are new, joining us out there, watching on YouTube or TorahAnytime.com, thank you so much for watching, but please remember that listening to the shiurim, learning the Zera Shimshon is just part of it. The zechut is also by sharing it. So please remember to share the Torah on your table, around the table on Shabbat, Ma'adim, or share the video, share the zechut with others so they can also take part in the merit of the Zera Shimshon and his promise, his segula. Those that are new, the Zera Shimshon is a deep, deep understanding of the parasha. He's a commentator on the Torah. One of the things that he does is a commentator on the Torah. He lived about 300 years ago in Italy. Just found out a few months ago that nobody knows where he's actually buried. We had one of our community members that went to Italy and as soon as he got there, texted me, "Where's the Zera Shimshon? I need to go visit." And I'm like, that's a great idea. I started searching, and lo and behold, I guess nobody knows where he is. So if there's anybody watching and found out somehow where the Zera Shimshon is actually buried, I would love to hear about it. Please comment. But the Zera Shimshon, in his last will and testament, he wrote, which is an introduction in his Sefer Zera Shimshon also, his will is put in here. His only child passed away in his lifetime, so he didn't leave any children behind. The only thing he left behind was his Torah. So he made a promise that anybody learns his Torah, anyone that shares his Torah, he promises that they will be very fruitful. They will, if they're single, he'll make sure they get married soon. If they don't have children yet, he makes sure they have children. If they need a refuah, anything, if they need healing, he makes sure they are healed. And many of the English Zera Shimshon books that have been translated today have half of the book is just testimonials from people that have learned the Zera Shimshon and miracles have happened for them. Crazy stuff. People that were told by doctors they'll never walk again, and they started walking after 3 months of Zera Shimshon therapy, so to speak. His Torah is, for the most part, at least for me, difficult, but it's beautiful. It is extremely deep and extremely beautiful. New ideas. So we'll delve in Be'ezrat Hashem. We do take sponsorships weekly, and I want to thank all of our sponsors till now that have sponsored our shiurim. There's a partial sponsor for this week was for the Refuah Shelema of Reuven ben Ra'ana. May he have a Rufat HaNefesh, Rufat HaGuf, Betoch Sha'ar Cholei Yisrael. Amen. Okay, so Be'ezrat Hashem. Those of you that are single, may the Zechut of the Zera Shimshon be a militz yosher and find you your zivug b'karob v'zmano. We've already had 4 people from our shiur that already got engaged or already married. Baruch Hashem, Be'ezrat Hashem, for many, many, many more to come. Okay, so the parashat today, these are my favorite parashiot. You can't have favorites in the Torah. I always have to say that, but these parashiot, the parsha that discusses Yosef HaTzadik and his brother is really, wow. It's the most dramatic story ever written. True story. You can't make this stuff up. It's the story of Yosef and his brothers. It's incredible. I've recommended this book probably 300 times already. There's a book. It's the story of Yosef written as a novel. It's called Let My Nation Descend. It's been sold out a few times that I've told people to go find it and buy it, but if you find it, it'll be life-changing. It is one of the best books you'll ever read. You can't put it down. I've done it. My wife read it and she couldn't put it down. And it's a story that everybody knows about. You know what I'm saying? It's in the Torah, but you think you know. This book goes into all the details of the Midrashim and the Gemaras and all the different details, the Kabbalistic details about it, and it's incredible. It really is incredible. Kian, there's chairs in the computer room behind the door. Can you bring some, please? Watch the camera. Watch the camera. Watch the camera. All right. So here we go. Josh, Please. Okay, gentlemen. Oh, no, I'm saying, give the chair. I'm kidding. So the parasha follows. Poor guy. I'm abusive sometimes. Trying to be nice to people. Here, chairs. You can just set them down right here in the front. Hazako Baruch. So, one of the stories in this week's parasha that's covered is when Yosef HaTzadik has already climbed up, so to speak, the ladder in Egypt. He's already been sold by his brothers. He's in Egypt. Now, he's a slave for Potiphar in his home, which is the head of the butchers. And he's doing well for himself as a slave. I mean, he has more rights than others. You know, he's free to do. His boss has given him everything in the household. He controls everything. The only thing that's just like degrading is his name. He's a slave. Other than that, he controls everything, right? And the boss believes in him. He's amazing. He's matzliach in everything that he does. So it says Yosef was alone at home. On that day, there was some kind of a party going on in Egypt. Everybody went to the New Year's party or whatever it was. Egypt was shut down. Everyone had to be with the paro or whatever it is, doing whatever they do in the streets. Yosef was alone at home. That's what the Torah says. And it was on that day he was alone. And Potiphar's wife makes it her plan. Now that Yosef is alone at home, my husband's not home, everybody else is out partying. This is the time for me to seduce Yosef. She was madly in love with him. She just had to have Yosef, and this was not the first time that she was trying to attempt seducing Yosef. But this time she went way too far. This time she got very physical, and that ended up with Yosef being in jail for 12 years, and the rest, as we say literally, is history. But let's focus on that day, what the pasuk says about that day. So this is all introduction, so please bear with me. The Zera Shimshon is going to start with a formula, teaching us a formula about how we learn halachot, how we learn different things from the Torah. One of the formulas on how we learn different things from the Torah is words that repeat themselves in all of Tanakh, meaning Torah, Nevi'im, and Ketuvim. If you have one word that has been repeated in different places in Tanakh the same way, the Talmud, usually the Gemara, learns out from that something. Why? They say, well, let's see what the common denominator is. This word is repeated 4 times, 5 times, 1 time in Bereshit, 1 time in Devarim, 1 time in here. What does this word mean? What can we learn from it? The Zera Shimshon is going to bring a lesson here about the word kahayom. So we're going to learn a few things tonight. We're going to be going into mysticism. We're going to be going into diktuk, Hebrew language, and how the Hebrew language works, and why that is going to be something that will teach us a lot about tonight's Terush. So here we go. All right. It's exciting stuff. B'Mesorah says, in our Mesorah, in our minhag, meaning what has been passed down from generation to generation from the time of Moshe Rabbeinu, we have kahayom arba'a, meaning the word kahayom, meaning like that day, has been repeated in all of Tanakh 4 times. 4 times and 4 times only. That's a big deal, because usually words in all of Tanakh, meaning Torah, Nevi'im, Ketuvim, everything you put together, for a word to only be repeated 4 times that way. Now that's not the only thing. Now, for those of you, doesn't matter, that speak Hebrew or understand Hebrew language, the Zera Shimshon is going to explain there are certain words that, okay, for instance, let me just go into it and we'll explain. All right, here we go. I can't give you a for instance because I draw blanks all of a sudden. It says, the pasuk says, "Vayhi kahayom hazeh vayovo habayta la'asot melachto," and it was like this day that he came home la'asot melachto, to do his work. This is talking about Yosef. He came home like this day to do his work. And that's when Potiphar's wife comes in and finds him alone and yada yada. Now, the word, why is this word important? Because we'll explain that afterwards. So sorry. It's just a lot of information. I'm trying to make sure everyone's going to understand. So here we go. So we have 4 times that the word kahayom is brought down in all of Tanakh. So one of them we just mentioned is when Yosef is alone at home. Kahayom. Vayhi kahayom hazeh vayavo habayta la'asot malachto. It was on like this day, which kind of is weird. It should say it was on that day. It says it was on like this day that he came home to do his work. The second one is the pasuk that says letov lanu kol hayamim lechayotenu kahayom hazeh. And that is in Devarim. And that is the commandment that the Torah gives each father to teach his children about Pesach, Passover, about the Haggadah, talk about the Pesach offering. And over there also uses the same word kahayom. It says letov lanu, that it should be good for us, kol hayamim, all of the days, lachayotenu, to give us life, kahayom hazeh, like this day. That was number 2. Number 3, ki oto kahayom timtseun oto. It's a conversation between Shaul and Shemuel Hanavi, Shaul HaMelech and Shemuel Hanavi. And over there he's saying to him, for you will find him like this, you will find him like this day. Again, the word kahayom. That's number 3. Number 4 is, vatehi artsechem lechorba v'leshama uleshama v'lichlala me'en Yosef kahayom hazeh. And that is Yirmiyahu Hanavi giving a warning to Bnei Israel. It was a prophecy about the destruction of the temple and the destruction of Yerushalayim, where it says, and your land will be desolate and inhabited, and it would be cursed. Me'en Yosef, with no inhabitants, no one living there, kahayom hazeh, like this day. And that's in Yirmiyahu Hanavi. That's Adkan. This is the tradition that we have passed down to us. These are the 4 different kahayoms. Now we'll see what the significance of these are, and you'll see the valuable lessons that Zera Shimshon is going to teach us here. Over Midrash Yalkut Matzinu, we find in Midrash Yalkut Shimoni, it says, Vayavo abayto la'asot melachto. When the pasuk says about Yosef coming home to do his work, Rabbi Eliezer says, Shabbat haya. That day was Shabbat. Now, how could Rabbi Eliezer know that? Yosef HaTzadik didn't leave an iPhone behind with his diary inside it, with a calendar date saying Shabbat, this and this day of the week. How could Rabbi Eliezer decipher this kind of a thing and tell us that you know what day Yosef was left alone in his home? It was actually Shabbos, right? It was Shabbat. Have you ever seen those? Have you ever seen? If you ever been to Yerushalayim, have you seen it? The Shabbos people. You have a question? Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. Here I am trying to go off topic, and she's like, no. Wait. Go ahead.
You said he was working on Shabbat. Like that's what you're indicating?
No, you will see. You'll see. That's a good one. Stop being so religious. What?
Which people in Israel?
So there's that. Basically, especially in Yerushalayim, in parts of Yerushalayim that like the entire city shuts down for Shabbat. Like it's beautiful. It's like Me'asharim, all of it. Like even further down. So like if God forbid there's stores that are not religious, they don't know any better. Sometimes makolets, these little markets, they open, right? And then no, chas v'shalom. Josh, can you no talking for the rest of the night. You have these Hasidim, they're really nice. They just go stand outside the store for like an hour straight. Just going, Shabbos. That's it. It's unbelievable how much koach they have to just stand there. And I'll give you a beautiful story about that. I was on one of our Magen trips to Israel. The star kids that we take every year. This is maybe like one of our early ones. We come out of the hotel And a lot of the kids from Beverly Hills and stuff like that, it's very new for them. They don't know what's going on. So we come out. There's a makolet right underneath our hotel. That little store we used to buy sodas from. You remember? Yeah, that store. Right? So at that time, he was open Friday afternoon, right before, it was like Shabbat already. So he's standing by the door of his store. He's just doing this thing. There's like 3 Hasidim just standing there. It's like, it's like business as usual. This guy's doing his work and these guys are like, Shabbos. So, as you would have it, we come out and all these kids, we're going to the kotel for tefillah, and the kids ask me, Rabbi, what's happening right now? They thought there was a seance going on or something, like there's fire gonna come from heaven. I'm like, no, it's Yerushalayim and stores shut down for Shabbat, and they're nicely trying to tell this Jew, like, listen, it's Shabbat, go home. He knows what's going on, the store owner. He's not like, he's just doing his thing. And then they're like, okay, I am doing my chiyuv of telling another Jew, nicely, please shut down your store. We come back, the glass is shattered on the store. There's glass everywhere. There's police. Now I'm with a group of like 40 teenagers from like LA. All of them were like, imagine religious Jews, like Jews on Jews. What? Everyone's like confused. I'm confused. I'm like, what? What? How do you explain such a thing? You know what I'm saying? Comes out the owner, and I'm standing by the owner as he's cleaning up the glass. The cops leave. He's cleaning up the glass, and I'm like, I want to know what's going on. So I go up to him, and I'm like, it's chaval, makara, what happened? And then I go like, you think it was like? He goes, what? No, it wasn't them. Rocks are muksa on Shabbat. They can't even throw a rock on Shabbat. I'm standing there going, huh? He goes, yeah, it definitely wasn't them. Trust me. They don't hurt anybody. I wanted to cry. Okay? They're like, it wasn't them. It was probably some what else can come? Like saw these Hasidic Jews causing trouble, quote unquote, right? And took the opportunity to come and break this guy's glass to blame it on them. But little did they know this guy was already, he's like, no, these guys don't break glasses. They don't destroy. I'm not on Shabbat. It was so beautiful for me. It was such a beautiful thing for me to hear. And these kids with me, I turn around, I'm like, you see, just as I thought. It wasn't, sometimes we're too quick to judge ourselves. And it was a very big lesson for me. Very big lesson for me. There's so much. I know sometimes we see, chas v'shalom, God forbid, we see some kind of animosity between religious and non-religious. Rare, but sometimes, unfortunately, we do see it. But there is so much more love than you know. There is so much more respect than you think. It's unbelievable. You just have to spend some time. You just have to spend some time to see how much love there is, religious, not religious. Push comes to shove, it would give life for each other. Life for each other. But mamash, I mean it. That's what's happening right now. Everything that goes on in Eretz Yisrael right now, Baruch Hashem. Anyway, all right, so let's get back. I don't even know how we got here. Right, something to do with you disturbing me with your question.
Do they work on Shabbat?
Right, Josh, what did we say about talking right now?
That's it.
Midrash Yalkut Matzinu, we find in Midrash Yalkut that Yosef HaTzadik came home La'asot melachto, to do his work. Now Rabbi Eliezer, as we said, says that day was Shabbat. How could he have known this? He says, Shene'emar, as the pasuk says, Kivo Shabbat mikol melachto. The pasuk in the Torah that talks about Hashem creating the world, and then Hashem ordaining the day of Shabbat, the seventh day, as the day of rest, quote unquote, meaning Hashem creating the day of Shabbat. It says about HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Kivo Shabbat mikol melachto, because on that day, he abstained from working or creating. That's how we know it was Shabbat. So now, what did Rabbi Eliezer do? It says, by Yosef, it says, on that day he came to do melachto, his work. By Hashem, it says, Kivo Shabbat mikol melachto. Hashem abstained from all of his work. Melachto, melachto. These two words, common denominator, must have been Shabbat. Because you see the word melachto by creation of Shabbat, and you see that by Yosef it says he came home to do his melachto. Must have been Shabbat. Now. You don't understand how much information is in these 7, 8 words. I don't even know. Who cares? Few words. I'll tell you why. Because many times, very, very bright and very intelligent people ask these questions. But Rabbi, that's how intelligent people sound. Rabbi, you tell me you know work on Shabbat. Don't work on Shabbat. Torah say, don't work on Shabbat. Okay. That's why I drive to Kenisa on Shabbat, because I don't want to work extra. I know Torah. Right? How do you answer such geniuses? How do you do it? I don't know. I sleep. Sometimes I lose sleep over this. On how do you even come up with that? So these are all jokes, people. Please don't share these videos with people that you know might get. But that's not how it works. For the longest time, we've touched, we've translated, we've said that on Shabbat we don't do work. Why? Because God didn't work. But that's not what it means. That's not what it means. If it really meant that you shouldn't work, anything that has work or toil in it, you shouldn't work or toil, you shouldn't get out of bed. Like some people are like, that's why I do that every Shabbat, because I am religious. So I stay in bed all day long. And they're going to shut off the video now and be like, I don't need to listen anymore. I'm a hacham, I'm a tzaddik. So, by the way, there were people that lived long time ago basically these people did not believe in the oral tradition whatsoever. They said everything is the written Torah that we have, that's the law. Right? Karaites or Tzidukim, they didn't believe in any of this. So that's actually what they did. They would sit in the dark every Shabbat, in the dark. They wouldn't even light any lights. No timers, nothing. No, lo tevaru esh bechol moshavotechem. You shall not have any fires in your homes. No candles, nothing. All of Shabbat was sitting in the dark. Most of them cheated anyway. But I'm saying, because they couldn't handle it. But that's what they believed. But that's not what it means. If you say that Shabbat means don't do any work and any toil, you're stuck. There's a lot of things you can't do on Shabbat. So what does it mean that Hashem rested and abstained from work on that day, or melacha? Okay, so I'm going to teach you what it means to do melacha on Shabbat. So the next genius, Hacham, Einstein, that comes and says, but it says no work, you have an answer. Same way what we did right now with the word melachto, right? The Torah says about Shabbat, it says, lo ta'asu melacha. You shall not do what we translate loosely as work, melacha, toil, work. But you have to ask yourself, what is the definition of work according to the Torah? What does God want from me? You have to define things in the Torah. How do you define things? What? You think they had art scrolls back then? You think every Jew went like, okay, it says don't do melacha, melacha, don't do work. That's not how it worked. How do you define the word melacha? So the way the Chachamim, at least later generations, after the passing down from generation to generation of the Mesorah, of the Minhag, what Moshe Rabbeinu taught the Jews, on paper, the way they did it was, they said, okay, let's look at where else can we find the word melacha. Where's this word used in another place in Tanakh? And let's see, when it says the word melacha over there, what is it talking about? And once we put the two together, we'll see the common denominator. Oh, that melacha means X. Therefore, Y equals X. So for instance, it says, on Shabbat it says, lo ta'asu melacha. You shall not do melacha. We're not going to define it as work. We're just going to say melacha. Don't do melacha. What does melacha mean? Now, when the Jews were in the desert and they were building the Mishkan, over there the Torah calls the work of building the Mishkan, it says melechet HaMishkan. The work of the Mishkan. And even over there, while the Jews were building the Mishkan, Hashem says, when you're building my Mishkan, don't do the melacha of the Mishkan on Shabbat. Don't build the Mishkan on Shabbat. Meaning, you're building this house for me, even Shabbat is more important than that. Pause every Shabbat, no more building the Mishkan on Shabbat. Don't do that melacha. So Chachamim said, so when it says, lo ta'asu melacha, don't do melacha, over there it says, melechet ha-mishkan, the melacha of Mishkan. So it means the things that were used to create the Mishkan, the work that went into creating the Mishkan is the work we're not allowed to do on Shabbat. That's how we have the Lamet Tet Melachot, the 39 main works, creative works of the Mishkan. Right? Everything that was used to build the Mishkan is those main things that a Jew is not allowed to do on Shabbat. Lighting a fire, nailing two boards together, threading, because the Mishkan had various different colors of wool and linen, different things that were used as the curtains. So sewing is a part of it. These are all called Av Melachot. Av is father, meaning the root of the melacha is there. Then it branches out to hundreds of other melachot that we're not allowed to do on Shabbat, right? So one person says, they didn't have cars those days. Yes, they didn't, but they did have fire. And cars have combustion engines, and that's a fire. Therefore, you can't drive a car on Shabbat, right? So that, in a nutshell, is how Torah is studied and Torah is learned in detail, so that you know exactly what it means not to do melacha, right? So you can't be lazy on Shabbat, laying in bed saying, I'm being shomer Shabbat today because I'm not going to do any work today. No, it's not. Right? You would be surprised what things are allowed on Shabbat, al pi halacha, because they're not in the category of malacha. And sometimes you'll be surprised as to what things are not allowed on Shabbat, because they're malacha, you had no idea. The things that sometimes I got surprised when I learned, like the things you cannot do. But that's not our lesson for tonight. But that's one of the things we learn, and that's what he's doing here as well. Rabbi Eliezer took the word melachto, and the other word melachto, and he said, must have been that day that Yosef HaTzadik came into his house. It says he came to do melachto, and by Hashem it says melachto on the day of Shabbat. It was the day of Shabbat. Now we're not even a quarter way done. So if you want to sleep, do it now. So he says, ubazeh. Says, now you're going to see something else about the diktuk. I said we're going to learn about Hebrew language also. He says, ubazeh. With this premise, he says, Navin Tama Pesukim, we understand the way behind the Pesukim. Lama barba'a mekomot elu katav kera kehayom. Why is it that in these 4 places, the Torah says kehayom? Now, those of us that understand Hebrew or have spoken Hebrew, it says, V'halo kayom sagi. It should really say kayom. Shouldn't say kahayom. Who are the Hebrew speakers here? Hebrew speakers? Is there such a thing as kahayom? Right, kamohayom, but not kahayom, right? How do you say kahayom, like the day? Kayom. You say kayom. Kayom, like the day, right? Now, when you want to say, hayom means the day. If you want to say like the day, you add a kaf. That's Hebrew language. So it would really become ka hayom, like the day. But the rule of Hebrew is that whenever there are certain words called kalev, kaf, lamed, and bet, anytime these 3 letters are the first letters of a word, the hey gets dropped. So kahayom becomes kayom. You don't say lahabayit, I'm going to the house. You go labayit, right? Or the suitcase is in the house. You don't say bahabayit. You go babayit, right? Right? In Persian, it's a funny babay. Babayit. You say babayit. So the hey gets dropped. However, he's bringing an interesting thing here. He's saying, why is it that in these 4 places in Tanakh, the hey is not dropped? Instead of saying kayom, it says kahayom. By Yosef HaTzadik, it says he came in kahayom, like the day. It should really say kayom. That's the correct biblical Hebrew and even correct Hebrew, modern Hebrew. So therefore he says, Ela must be vaday lehorot lanu. It is coming to teach us something extra. He says that in these 4 places, the Tanakh is trying to teach us something about Shabbat. Why Shabbat, you say? Because שהעולם הזה הוא דומה ללילה. By the way, the Hey Hayedi'ah, the letter Hey is a letter that is we call it the Hey Hayedi'ah, meaning I thank you so much. Thank you. The identifying letter, right? So it's like you want to say like Hakelev, so you're identifying the dog, like the dog. I don't even know why I picked Kelev. Like you're Hachatul, the cat, right? It's an identity. So whenever you have in the Torah also, whenever you have the Hey, you have to see what the Hey is actually identifying. Now, the letter Hey here is identifying Shabbat, and you will see. It says, in these 4 places, medaber be'inyan yom HaShabbat. It is really, the verse is speaking about the day of Shabbat, because it's considered the day. A lot of times in the Torah, when the word the day comes, it's talking about the day of Shabbat, because it's a day that everybody knows, it's separate from all the other days. That's the day, right? Listen to this new concept. It says, this world is compared to night. It's dark. However, the world to come is compared to day. It's a day of light. You'll see that in Gemara Pesachim also. He says, and the day of Shabbat, as Chachamim tell us, has been compared. It's brought down in Barachot, Gemara Barachot. Day of Shabbat is me'ein olam haba. Shabbat is like a piece of olam haba, the world to come. You know, it's not just the cholent and the good food and the rest on Shabbat that you really feel like, I love this day. No, the day itself is very close to olam haba. Therefore, on Shabbat, you feel different. There's a saying that Chachamim actually talk about, a person that's deserted on a desert. He's lost on an island, and he doesn't know what day of the week it is. One of the opinions says, every person will know Shabbat. Just wait for that feeling and start counting. How crazy is that? Because the day of Shabbat, you always feel different. That's Me'en Olam Haba. You're feeling a little bit of Olam Haba within you. So he says, he says, therefore, it makes sense, it's appropriate to hint to it with the word kahayom, like the day, that is the day of Shabbat. Like a day of, because it's like a day of Olam Haba, it's a day out of this world. Shabbat really is not a day earthly, is more of a day of Olam Haba. It's different than a regular day. I want to just say myself also, Yosef HaTzadik at that moment, on that day, received his Olam Haba. That was the day that Yosef HaTzadik actually chose Olam Haba over Olam Hazeh, meaning he chose the world to come versus this world. Why? Because he was being enticed by one of the most beautiful women that ever lived. And this was not just once or twice, many times this just happened. This time it was horrific because he was alone. She caught him alone. As a lost boy sold by his brothers, he had nothing to lose. And he still didn't give in to this woman. He basically decided to forego pleasures, the worldly pleasures of this world, the greatest pleasures of this world, bodily pleasures. Why? For olam haba, for the world to come. Kahayom, he literally chose me'ein olam haba. On that day, he chose to grab onto olam haba instead of saying, I'm going to have a minute of pleasure with this woman, and then what? You know, they say, I think Chachamim say that, we know that at that moment, it says one of the things that really helped Yosef HaTzadik withstand this challenge was that he saw an image of his father, Yaakov Avinu, speaking with him. And they say, what did Yaakov Avinu say to him? He said to him, and we've done this in the Zera Shimshon as well, previous years. Yaakov Avinu's father said to him, your name is supposed to be inscribed on the stone, on the Choshen HaMishpat, on the stone on the breastplate of the Kohen Gadol. You have a stone called Yosef. Do you want that stone to be erased? And that's something that really got Yosef to turn around. And that's another way of looking at it. It was Olam Haba. It was his father literally telling him, do you want this moment of pleasure or do you want eternity? Because forever and ever, Am Yisrael is going to know that stone is the stone of Yosef versus 11 stones. Ending with Binyamin, skipping Yosef. Just imagine that, right? It was just that moment, just one moment could have changed everything. He chose Olam Haba. So I thought it fits also when we say Kahayom is referring to Shabbat, and Shabbat is Me'ein Olam Haba, is a part of Olam Haba. Yosef HaTzadik also chose Olam Haba on the day of Shabbat. Vabet Yosef Orach Chaim Siman Resh Pe Chet Katav. Now this is going to be a shocker to many of us in this room, especially guess which group? The guys or the girls? That's right. It's going to be a shocker to the boys. It's going to break them. It's completely going to, watch this. The Bet Yosef says in Orach Chaim in the Shulchan Aruch, Orach Chaim Resh Pe Chet. He says like this, Shehapoalim ha'oskim malachtam. So now he's going to bring in what these 4 different kahayoms refer to. We said there's 4 times that the word kahayom is mentioned in Tanakh. What are they referring? So he says, Bet Yosef says that those that are businessmen, workers, they're busy with work all week. Kol yemei hashavua, the entire week they're working, they're busy, they have office work or whatever, they're farmers, whatever you want to, cab drivers, Uber drivers, Lyft drivers, real estate, don't get offended, real estate is a part of it, right? Mechuyavim lilmod Torah kol yom Shabbat. They are obligated to learn Torah the entire Shabbat. If you're busy working the entire week, Hashem says, Hazaku Baruch, that's why I gave work. I want you to be busy. I don't want you to be laying around doing nothing. No problem. I've given you one day designated just for Torah. So go work like a dog for those 6 days, 5.5 days. No problem. I give you Shabbat. All day, you could learn Torah. Oh, love it, right? And that's what the Shulchan Aruch passes. Shulchan Aruch says, if a person is busy all week working, what do you do on Shabbat? Sleep. No, you don't. On Shabbat is your day to learn Torah. Omnam. It says, however, Talmidei Chachamim, Hayegeim b'Torah kol hashavua, those scholars of Torah that are learning Torah every day of the week, this is Shulchan Aruch, not me. Maran Bet Yosef, he says, Yecholim b'yom Shabbat leit'aneg ba'achila u'shtiyah av kol hayom kulo. Those Chachamim can take the day of Shabbat as a day of chilling. Eat, drink, sleep. Enjoy the day of Shabbat in that sense. Meaning, the Shulchan Aruch is saying, look, according to the Torah, everybody's got to enjoy. Everyone's going to have a good time. So Badbach, this guy is a real estate agent. He's working all week. He can't enjoy. He can't enjoy and bask in Torah. So okay, Shabbat, you can learn Torah. But the Talmid Chacham that is working all week so hard, preparing Torah shiurim, learning Torah and halachot, this and that, he needs a break. So on Shabbat, he'll have the break. Drink, eat, take a nap, it's okay. We'll get to how much of this is actually applied also. You have a question?
Yeah, regarding this, on Shabbat, isn't it greater to learn more on Shabbat as opposed to during the week?
Yeah. It is greater to learn on Shabbat than the rest of the week. No. We're just saying halachically, as far as the Shulchan Aruch, the obligation halachically is less. For those that are learning all week, okay. You need your energy for the rest of the week to learn Torah? Take off. Right? Now. So he says, Afkan is here too. Okay. Here too. Yosef Shaya Eved Sham. Yosef that was an Eved, he was a slave. Yosef HaTzadik was a slave at Potiphar's home. All week he was slaving, quite literally, for his master. He couldn't learn Torah. He couldn't really bask in God's presence the entire week. Therefore, the Torah says, Vayihi kahayom. And it was on that day, Yosef HaTzadik has finally had a day. He was going to sit down and learn Torah. Everyone's going to leave me alone today. It's my Shabbat. At least they're not home today. I'm going to learn Shabbat. That's why it says he came home to do his work. Melachto means something that could be split into two. Melechet vav. Now, the word melachto is made up of the word melechet, the work of, and a vav at the end. Melachto. There's a vav at the end. So it says, so he breaks it down and goes, melechet vav. Limud Torah shel sheshet yamim. Meaning, he came to, after the 6th day, he came for the 7th day to learn Torah. The vav is numerical value of 6. So it says, melachto. He came after working 6 days to learn Torah on the 7th day. So we learned already. We learned what melacha is, what is considered melacha. We also learned the obligation for men. I mean, women also, of course. But as far as obligations go, men have an obligation to learn Torah. Women do not have an obligation to learn Torah. However, definitely, women should not waste the day of Shabbat also in napping and taking drinks or whatever it is. They should also learn. Tehillim. Baruch Hashem, in our town here, on every Shabbat, many places finish Tehillim multiple times, and it's all by our wonderful Nashim Tzadkaniyot, our righteous ladies that get together and they pray for Am Yisrael, they pray for everybody. Without them, I don't know where we would be, and I'm not even saying that. I don't know where California would have been, which hellhole it would have sunk into if it wasn't because of women doing Tehillim on Shabbats. That's got to be said, because this place is very close. This is Sodom and this is California. Like, it's crazy. So I want to just give a shout out to all the women, ladies, davening for Am Yisrael and doing Tehillim all the time. Hazaku Baruch. So, ladies and men, the day of Shabbat should be put aside for that. Now, that goes as far as obligations go. I don't know. Now, you remember, we said that Talmidei Chachamim, those that learn Torah all week, Shulchan Aruch says they can take the day of Shabbat, so to speak, as off. They can drink. I don't know one tzaddik, I don't know one Talmid Chacham that does that. I don't know any of the righteous people, this generation, the past generation, that learned all week and on Shabbat they decided to enjoy being, never. In fact, prime example, as I always bring, Rav Ovadia Yosef Zatzal, Hacham Ovadia, in our generation. Shabbat was not only a day of rest for him from Torah learning. Friday nights after dinner, he went into his study till the morning. He did not sleep Friday. Forget about taking a nap on Shabbat afternoons. He didn't even sleep Friday night. And when they asked his children, so what did he do? They said on Shabbat day, usually in his study, while he was studying, he would just doze off on his chair, 10, 15 minutes, boom, recharged, he would go for the next few hours. That's it. We are like, Shabbat after having cholent. Jan Eden, I'm going to bed. I invite people to my home, and within an hour, they're like, Rabbi, thank you so much. Where are you going? It's Shabbat. As if I have a chiyuv, it's written on my blood. I have to go to sleep now, or else I'm not Yotze Shabbat. I have to go home now. I got to go nap. And nap, what they call nap, in certain animal kingdoms, it's it's called the winter sleep. Or like bears, they go like they'll wake up the next day from mincha. They'll literally go home and take a nap Shabbat afternoon, and Sunday they'll wake up right before Sharia. I need to put tefillin. You know, I'm not exaggerating here. Okay, people take a little bit of Shabbat sleep a little too seriously, and there are those that actually match it with the word Shabbat. They do the whole Shabbat, Shin, Bet, Taf, Shena b'Shabbat ta'anug. Sleep on Shabbat is enjoyable. It's like, it's the word. I mean, Hashem put it in the word, right? I can tell you there's a lot of other things you can that you could put into those words, you know, I'm sure. So we see from here, even the fact that for even Talmidei Chachamim that are learning all week, they have off, they don't take the off. They don't take off. Why? Because Chachamim tell us, the Torah that you learn on Shabbat is incomparable to the rest of the week. I've experienced it myself. When you learn Torah on Shabbat, it's like your mind is different. On Shabbat, it's like it opens more for spirituality. It's crazy. How much you take in on Shabbat versus you could do 1 hour of learning Torah on Shabbat. It's compared to like 5 hours of Torah learning on a weekday. It's crammed in. It's so amazing. It's so enjoyable. If you don't have Torah learning during the week, I advise you to at least set up a shiur or something on Shabbat for however long it is. And this is the second thing he's going to go to. So he says, now, that was the first pasuk. So we'll be done soon. That was the first pasuk. The first pasuk is Yosef. So now we know Yosef, Kayom, he had come, he wanted to do his learning. Second one was, we said, is talking about Pesach and a father teaching his children about Pesach. It says, Hashem has commanded us to do all of these laws. This is actually talking about Talmidei Chachamim that learn all week. Hashem has ordered us to perform all these laws. Letov lanu kol hayamim, good for us all of our days. Shemalu chovatam midei yom beyomo, because they go, these Torah scholars go and fulfill their obligation of Torah study every day. Ve'az, therefore, and then when Shabbat comes, nuchal leit'aneg, they can enjoy their day with achila u'shtiya. Uchneged mi she'eno yodea lilmod. He says, corresponding to someone, let's say someone doesn't know how to learn. They weren't raised in a religious home. They didn't go to Jewish school. For those that don't know how to learn, Amar, it says, Ki oto kahayom timtzon oto. That's the pasuk we said is in Shemuel. It's talking about Shaul HaMelech and Shemuel HaNavi talking to each other. It says, and on that day you will find it. Ki oto hayom timtzon oto. On that day you will find it. Shamru zichron bracha. Chachamim has told us when Moshe Rabbeinu on the pasuk, I'm going really fast, don't worry. In the Torah, Parashat Vayakel, it says Vayakel Moshe, and Moshe gathered all of Am Yisrael. Sheizhiran, what was this assembly for? Sheizhiram she'erhilu kehulot bechol Shabbat barabim. He was teaching them the laws that Jews are supposed to make assemblies on Shabbat to learn Torah. Kedel lishmoa divrei Torah. You don't know how to learn Torah on your own? Find a shiur, find a class on Shabbat, and go to it. You don't just throw away the obligation and say, okay, people that learn Torah, Shabbat, they should be learning Torah. No, if you don't know how to learn on your own, that's fine. Find a class on Shabbat and go. Like in our shul at Sykes, every Shabbat, I make it a point, after Kiddush, for some people it's lunch, after Kiddush, we have a 5-10 minute class on halachot of Shabbat. You know, you go home learning something new about Shabbat. And so far, Baruch Hashem, it's been amazing. People are telling me that it's changing their Shabbats. They're changing their minhagim at home, the way they prepare. Because right now, we're in the beginning, we're talking about preparations of Shabbat. They're changing the way they prepare on Shabbat. People have changed from lighting candles for Shabbat. Now they're buying oil. Because we talked about olive oil and how much better it is for the home. And now people are lighting with olive oil. It's beautiful. You learn something new. So wherever you go to shul, whichever synagogue you're a part of, find a class and learn on Shabbat, even if it's for half an hour, even if it's for 15 minutes, 10 minutes, do it. Next one, The next pasuk we had that had the word kahayom, he says, whoever does not pay attention to this and does not do this, the last pasuk was talking about the destruction. That was the Yirmiyahu Navi, talking about Jerusalem being desolate and cursed. It says, it says your lands will be desolate, without Yoshev, without inhabitants, like this day. Now he translates it as, he defines this pasuk, because you didn't sit and learn Torah like this day, meaning to grasp in Shabbat and really take in Olam Haba, Kayom Hazeh. Inami, he says, therefore, you will be laid desolate and destroyed because you did not choose to bring this beracha into your home, into your dwellings. So now, just to recap everything that we learned. Number one, we learned how we define the word melacha. How do we know what a melacha is on Shabbat? That's how we define it. So that a lot of times, you don't understand how many millions of times I've had that question being asked. And I've had it being asked by very honest people. Like, Rabbi, okay, it says don't do melacha. So like, okay, well, why am I walking to shul? Why can't I use this? Or why can't I use that? This is a very valid question. All jokes aside. Now you know that melacha has nothing to do with it. Your shul could be an hour and a half away, walking in sun, and you're still not in the heat of the sun, you're still not doing any melacha. Even though you're sweating, you're hot, it's tiring, that's not melacha, right? You take an electric bike, you go half a block, you've done a melacha right there. That's it. You go 2 steps, you do a melacha with it. That's a melacha on Shabbat. So that's one thing we learned. We learned where we get it from. We also learned that kahayom, whenever you have the word kalev, chaf, lamed, and bet, and the hey hayadi'ah, the defining hey, how the hey drops and it becomes kayom or layom or bayom, right? And therefore, that was the significant part of the word kahayom, and that's why we were learning from it, because there was something strange about it where the hey was not dropped. Because the hey wasn't dropped, the Torah was trying to tell us that, it was that day. The what? The hayom. What's the hayom? It's referring to Shabbos. Shabbos. And we also learned, as a side note, how much love Am Yisrael truly has for each other. How much love we truly have. Don't listen to all the garbage about the politics and the left and the right, da-da-da-da. Am Yisrael Chai Le'olam, we are one, we've always been one, we love each other, we care for each other. I don't care what your religious level is, I don't care, you're Hasidish, you're Sephardi, you're Ashkenaz, you're Chiloni, you're Kippah Seruga, Kippah Black, I don't care. I'll close my eyes, I will hug you like you've never been hugged. That has to be our attitude towards every single Jew, wherever the world they are. Baruch Adonai Le'olam, amen, amen.